about the afternoon that we've just had in the clinical ethics forums, and it'd be really interesting to maybe hear from you both about what you found or what your experience of those forums were. Perhaps if you could give us some feedback.
I found it really interesting to discuss a case which included all different areas of sort of social, not social work, but sort of social work, you know, of doctors and psychologists, and just to see everyone's different perspective.
Okay.
And I was actually expecting to find a lot of difference between my perspective and someone who's from a medical perspective, but actually it was quite similar.
Okay.
So maybe they didn't think of things that I might think of. So we had a case where we were talking about a woman who had come into hospital and needed, you know, care, and do we, you know, allow her to stay at home or put her in a care home. So I was looking at more sort of assessing the home, you know, keeping her at home and things like that, and they were looking at more of a medical point of view, but sort of also understanding where I was coming from. So yeah.
Okay.
I was part of a different group but found a similar experience, to be honest. That I was expecting to be not thinking the same way as the medical students, but actually there was a lot of similar feelings around what good practice looked like and what was the best decisions, best interests for the people that we were working with. Certainly I found that it was really interesting to consider the quadrant model, and actually looking more at the medical perspective, because during the course we're sort of told that that's not the best way to practice in terms of social work practice, but actually how is the best way to consider that ethically, and working with other people to consider that ethically, and also bringing something to them which they probably haven't considered ethically. And it was a really nice relationship, and good to learn a little bit from them, and also give something back to them as well. I definitely feel like this is something that could have been introduced throughout the years of study, from first, second and third. Certainly I can appreciate how much work has probably gone into making this session available today, and I think I would agree that it was really, really beneficial. But actually in terms of what we learn as practitioners is very, very social driven, and values of the person, and actually if this was brought to us slightly earlier on, we could also refer back to this medical clinical ethics perspective a lot sooner in our practice learning, rather than be set in stone with the direction that we are 3 years down the line from our learning, in the same way that I imagine the other students are as well. They're very set in the ways of practice, and then right at the very end of their learning being told, well actually there's a different way to look at it now, whereas if that was introduced a little bit earlier, it could be something they could be reflective on throughout their practice learning.
I think also there's a lot of or sort of throughout the couple of years we've had, it sort of made it seem like we're going to be working in multidisciplinary teams, but it made it seem like we might be fighting against the doctors and sort of fighting against what other people are thinking. So it sort of makes you think that actually there's going to be a lot of tension there when you're trying to make, work with people and make decisions, but finding that actually they have, people from medical backgrounds actually have a lot of the same views from a different viewpoint maybe, but it's all for best interests of the person.
So it sounds like that opportunity to work with our medical colleagues and clinical psychology colleagues has helped you recognise perhaps some of the similarities between the disciplines as well as perhaps some of the differences. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
And can I just ask, if you think about today's experience and then you think about going back into your practice learning placements tomorrow, is it clear to you about what skills maybe you're taking back, or different perspectives that you may be taking back into your practice placements?
I feel like I'm quite set and confident as being a challenging practitioner and challenging practice. I think what I will take away is maybe not being so standoffish with a medical perspective in some ways, and actually being reflective of, well, that's their position, and actually what do I need to consider from their point of view
Excellent.
that needs to be applied to my practice.
Mhm.
Whereas before I'd probably more inclined to challenge what
Okay,
they
to be a
said
bit more
directly.
defensive or, yeah.
Whereas now I think I'd take that away and see how I can work alongside that practitioner in, you know, a more helpful way than purely just challenge it.
Right.
I mean, there's so much benefit of working with doctors because they have all this knowledge of the medical side and medication
Mhm.
and doses and stuff that I've no idea about.
And why should you? Because you're a
Yeah.
social worker.
Mhm. So having someone that's looking at medical things and knowing how different medication might affect
Mhm.
a person and giving us that information, and then we're aware of how it affects someone as well, and it just works really well.
Okay, great. Is there anything else in particular that either of you want to say about today that we've not touched on already in this conversation? Any other feedback or any other kind of thinking that it's prompted for either of you?
I just really enjoyed it.
Good, well.
It was just nice to discuss ethical issues, and it was just nice to meet new people with different, coming from different areas as well. I just really enjoyed it.
Great, it's good to hear that.
I think as social workers we're taught to be reflective of other people's opinions and values and thought processes. So actually to hear other people's thought processes and how they look at things was really, really interesting. Just to think of something as sort of feedback on that, more variety on the different services and people coming in, because actually I feel like I took so much from the clinical psychologist and also from the medical students that I almost feel like I'd like more.
You want more?
Yeah, OTs and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I would quite, take some value from more variety
Sure.
in there. So I'd like to think that they took something from it as well.
I'm
And
sure they did. Great.
But if we could do this with every sort of case that we had and get everyone,
Oh,
have a multidisciplinary meeting on every single case,
wouldn't that be
just
great? Social work seems so easy,
it'd be
wouldn't
such a
it?
holistic view of
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
So.
something that Apphia mentioned earlier actually was that during our course we get told that about working in multidisciplinary teams and the importance of it and the value of it, but actually this has been brought to us right at the end of our practice learning, and actually the importance of it should be made relevant a lot sooner.
An earlier stage.
Yeah, and also just in terms of confidence building, to be confronted with other professionals, because what I did find is that initially when I went in there I did feel a little bit overwhelmed, because the clinical psychologists were doctorate students and the medical students were in their 5th year, so that was slightly intimidating to think that actually I felt like their education was a little bit above my abilities. So actually more practice with working alongside people at that level, and actually recognising that actually it's okay, and just because they're doing a doctorate or they're in their 5th year, it doesn't mean that their opinion is any better than mine, as it were. So just I think valuable to have more of these experiences if it was possible.
That's really useful to know, so thank you.
And just sort of knowing your role as well, and where you come in. And I think having that discussion before going into the meeting and talking about what does social work bring, I think that was good, because you're thinking about what perspectives can we bring to the table.
So recognising your own kind of knowledge base and skill base. It's very easy to forget what you know and what you can do, isn't it?
And it definitely brought to the table how diverse social work practitioners are, because the cases that we were looking at opened up lots of different social work avenues, whereas the clinical psychologists were just very much set on assessments and clinical psychology, the medical students on diagnosis, and actually I was able to offer lots of different avenues.
Opening up different ways of thinking.
It reminded me that actually there's lots that we've learned on this course, and there's lots of different options available to people through social work.
Great. Thank you.